Robert Lee Frost, March 26, 1874, January 29, 1963, was an American poet. His work was initially published in England before it was published in the United States. Known for his realistic depictions of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech, Frost frequently wrote about settings from rural life in New England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. Frost was honored frequently during his lifetime and is the only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in 1960 for his poetic works. On July 22, 1961, Frost was named Poet Laureate of Vermont. Biography, Adult Years. In 1894, he sold his first poem, My Butterfly. An elegy, published in the November 8, 1894, edition of the New York Independent, for $15, $449 today. Proud of his accomplishment, he proposed marriage to Eleanor Miriam White, but she demurred, wanting to finish college, at St. Lawrence University, before they married. Frost then went on an excursion to the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia and asked Eleanor again upon his return. Having graduated, she agreed, and they were married at Lawrence, Massachusetts on December 19, 1895. Frost attended Harvard University from 1897 to 1899, but he left voluntarily due to illness shortly before his death. Frost's grandfather purchased a farm for Robert and Eleanor in Derry, New Hampshire. Frost worked the farm for 9 years while writing early in the mornings and producing many of the poems that would later become famous. Ultimately his farming proved unsuccessful and he returned to the field of education as an English teacher at New Hampshire's Pinkerton Academy from 1906 to 1911, then at the New Hampshire Normal School, now Plymouth State University, in Plymouth, New Hampshire. In 1912, Frost sailed with his family to Great Britain, settling first in Beaconsfield, a small town outside London. His first book of poetry, A Boy's Will, was published the next year. In England he made some important acquaintances, including Edward Thomas, a member of the group known as the Dymock Poets and Frost's inspiration for The Road Not Taken, T. E. Hume, and Ezra Pound. Although Pound would become the first American to write a favorable review of Frost's work, Frost later resented Pound's attempts to manipulate his American prosody. Frost met or befriended many contemporary poets in England, especially after his first 2 poetry volumes were published in London in 1913, A Boy's Will, and 1914, North of Boston. In 1915, during World War I, Frost returned to America, where Holt's American edition of A Boy's Will had recently been published, and bought a farm in Franconia, New Hampshire, where he launched a career of writing, teaching, and lecturing. This family homestead served as the Frost summer home until 1938. It is maintained today as the Frost Place, a museum and poetry conference site. He was made an honorary member of Phi Beta Kappa at Harvard in 1916. During the years 1917-20, 1923-25, and, on a more informal basis, 1926 to 1938, Frost taught English at Amherst College in Massachusetts, notably encouraging his students to account for the myriad sounds and intonations of the spoken English language in their writing. He called his colloquial approach to language the sound of sense. In 1924, he won the first of 4 Pulitzer Prizes for the book New Hampshire, a poem with notes and grace notes. He would win additional Pulitzers for collected poems in 1931, A Further Range in 1937, and A Witness Tree in 1943. For 42 years, from 1921 to 1962, Frost spent almost every summer and fall teaching at the Breadloaf School of English of Middlebury College, at its mountain campus at Ripton, Vermont. He is credited as a major influence upon the development of the school and its writing programs. In 1921, Frost accepted a fellowship teaching post at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where he resided until 1927 when he returned to teach at Amherst. While teaching at the University of Michigan, he was awarded a lifetime appointment at the university as a Fellow in Letters. The Robert Frost Ann Arbor home was purchased by the Henry Ford Museum in Dearborn, Michigan and relocated to the museum's Greenfield Village site for public tours. Throughout the 1920s, Frost also lived in his colonial-era home in Shaftesbury, Vermont. In 1934, Frost began to spend winter months in Florida. In March 1935, he gave a talk at the University of Miami. In 1940, he bought a 5-acre, 2.0 hectares, plot in South Miami, Florida, naming it Pencil Pines. He spent his winters there for the rest of his life. Frost died in Boston on January 29, 1963, of complications from prostate surgery. He was buried at the Old Bennington Cemetery in Bennington, Vermont. His epitaph quotes the last line from his poem, The Lesson for Today, 1942, "I had a lover's quarrel with the world.